Whether it's an appetite for adrenaline, an addiction for tension, or sadistic curiosity, horror games continue to scare us. Yet, establishing how much fear can a game conjure in the name of entertainment is wholly subjective. Our nightmares aren't collective. With this in mind, the top horror games on this list are deeply varied. Cosmic nightmares, haunted houses, malevolence, gore, and hostility. It's all here in ghoulish splendor. And in a move which opens up to rampant criticism, this rundown is presented in order, from chilling to terrifying. Still Wakes the Deep. A shoe-in for Scariest game of 2024 so far, Still Wakes the Deep duties you as an electrician, Kaz, aboard a bleak, ocean-rusting North Sea oil rig before an accident occurs and situations go awry. It's best to not know too much before stepping aboard, but it's safe to say the Chinese Room have delivered an atmospheric horror for the ages, replete in equal measure with dread and mystery. Tormented Souls. Evoking Alone in the Dark alongside vintage Resident Evil with dynamically shifting camera perspectives, particularly reminiscent of RE Code Veronica, Tormented Souls follows protagonist Caroline Walker as she tiptoes through the candlelit corridors of a petrifying mansion turned asylum. There's mystery surrounding the disappearance of two young girls to solve, but evil lurks in the shadows that'll shock you to the core. Tormented Souls lingers long after the credits roll. Observer System Redux. Fulfilling the role of a cybernetically enhanced police detective who can hack into dead people's minds via the nefariously dubbed Dream Eater is disturbing enough. But in Observer, a hybrid of cyberpunk aesthetic and psychological horror, the secrets of said minds require intrepid exploration, warped environments demanding recontextualization amid a backdrop of palpitating neon and unsettling ambient sound design. System Redux reworks the original's annoying stealth sections to a degree. The game would rank higher if stealth wasn't still cumbersome. Dead by Daylight. One of the better asymmetrical multiplayers out there, Dead by Daylight pools 4 survivors tasked with escaping the clutches of a savage killer. What Dead by Daylight lacks in genuine scares, it makes up for intense, authentically fun action. Looking over your shoulder whilst fixing broken generators is agonizing for survivors, and like delicious food on a plate for the killer. Here, developer Behavior Interactive have crafted a love letter to Hollywood horror, with iconic villains from Saw, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and A Nightmare on Elm Street, amongst others that are downloadable. Dying Light. Not since Mirror's Edge has the art of traversal been so thrilling. Chuck hordes of zombies into the mix, meaty fodder upon which to savagely slice your way through, and you've got the ingredients for an all-timer. Dying Light brought first-person parkour to apocalyptic streets and skyways, and in its dilapidation lay a schlock of blocks and blades to forge brutal weaponry. Possibly the most gratifying of zombie games, Dying Light basks in verticality and hyperviolence. Days Gone. There's no escaping Days Gone as a divisive entity. This open-world trek through verdant, zombie-infested Oregon didn't resonate with critics, but gamers loved it, and encapsulating the term sleeper hit more so than most, its fandom continues to grow. There are calls for a sequel, and it's clear to see why, strategically funneling throngs of freakers through carefully laid traps. Eliminating their numbers en masse is still to this day a unique highlight which never grows tiresome. Signalis. This trauma-inducing dreadfest unites the scarce ammunition and scant resources of classic Resident Evil with cosmic-themed psychological horror. As we explore the confines of a derelict ghost ship in Signalis, we step into the psyche of human android Elster as she works to uncover the mystery behind the vessel's desertion. Forging carefully through darkness to uncover the mysteries behind the vessel's abandoned populace, Elster confronts her fears in the face of strange horrors. The Quarry. More a thriller than hardcore horror, Supermassive Games' spiritual successor to Until Dawn is an enjoyable teen slasher romp, and much like its predecessor, features an ensemble cast with Hollywood horror movie heavyweights like David Arquette, Lin Shaye, and Ted Raimi. Revolutionary is the game's branching narratives too, leading to 186 different endings, with each of the 9 characters' fates left to player choice. The Quarry is edgy and tense, brilliantly scripted and acted, and a game that's as enjoyable to watch as it is to play. Little Nightmares 2. Noxious, shuffling terror viewed through a child's eye is undeniably disturbing. Faces worn by TV static, child bullies with cracked porcelain heads, hands bulging through walls. Unnerving is this imagery, yet it's grounded in a semblance of reality. These twisted horrors are warped or embellished even by a child's imagination. This is how Little Nightmares 2 sticks with you. Awkward controls or annoying trial and error gameplay can't detract from the game's sickening iconography. Layers of Fear. Layers of Fear succeeds in how it manifests our playable artist's inner psychological torment as a shape-shifting physical world, making the player doubt themselves and everything around them as they navigate through the artist's maddening obsessions. The haunted house trope works exceptionally well here. Furniture darts across rooms, doors disappear, corridors lead to deeper, darkening corners of the artist's psyche. Subsequent Layers of Fear entries maximize the psychological horror, but this first entry melded character development and atmosphere the best. Madison. Scientifically recognized as the scariest game of all time by the Science of Scare Project, the most elevated heart rates recorded whilst participants played Madison might be down to the game's refusal to adhere to overused horror tropes, instead using player character Luca's handheld camera as a continually tense connection to a macabre alt dimension. Knowing there are terrors invisible to the naked eye, demonic entities only a camera can see, well, yeah, that'll keep pulses racing for sure. The Mortuary Assistant. Working as a mortician in the dead of a stormy night is creepy enough, yeah, but wiring shut the jaws of cadavers, draining their tepid fluid, embalming, it's just a job though, right? Well, no, not in the case of the Mortuary Assistant. Locked inside the grounds of Riverfield's mortuary, your only escape is to exorcise the demonic entity stalking its corridors. Blending on-the-job corpse work with tense demon evasion presents an ever-present chill which never lets up. Darkwood. Don't let the top-down perspective fool you into thinking this isn't a scary game. Darkwood sparingly uses light and shadow, instead utilizing sound design to fill the blanks in your imagination. The result? You're perennially on your toes, fearful of the dangers lurking in the woods. The game follows the survival blueprint: scavenge for resources during the day, batten down the hatches in your hideout at night, but the nightmarish reality of the forest, its inhabitants, its haunted lore, it all just melds together so effectively, there's really no surprise Darkwood has grown to be a cult horror classic. Condemned Criminal Origins. Condemned Criminal Origins follows FBI agent Ethan Thomas on the run from his fellow agency after being framed for murder, desperate to crack the case that'll exonerate him. Strangely, his city's surge in serial murders and homeless violence seem connected, but as Condemned's story evolves, clearly influenced by movies Seven and Silence of the Lambs, it grows to encompass more beyond the actions of any one individual killer. As Ethan's life becomes increasingly tumultuous in the process, it's the lingering sense of dread which transforms this first-person action game into something more horrific. Silver Chains. An abandoned mansion is not as abandoned as it might seem. This creaking manor is filled with, yep, you probably guessed it, ghosts, a lot of them. The spooky goings-on are a little cookie-cutter here, but the atmosphere, tension, and horrifying backstory behind the mansion's former inhabitants, and how it all relates to our fish-out-of-water protagonist Peter, propels Silver Chains beyond its potential derivativeness. Perhaps a lesser-known title on this rundown, Silver Chains has its fans thanks to an immersive story and chilling exploration. The Evil Within 2. Perhaps the more action-driven gameplay leaves many believing The Evil Within 2 isn't as scary as its predecessor. However, with a twisting, unexpected plotline and deep emotional attachment to Sebastian as he hunts for his daughter in a nightmarish reality, the stakes and scare factor are much higher. The monsters here are more creatively disturbing too, the psychological trauma more pronounced. The Evil Within sequel is undoubtedly a superior game. Fatal Frame 2: Crimson Butterfly. The thing with Fatal Frame is how it leaves players feeling exposed. There's nothing between you and folkloric phantoms but a magical camera, the camera obscura, each capture dispelling ghouls that are too close for comfort. The first game, if memory serves, was too scary for many a player, so developer Tecmo decided for Fatal Frame 2: Crimson Butterfly to craft a narrative so compelling that players couldn't help but complete it, even if through wincing eyes. Bloodborne. Despite FromSoft's aptitude for macabre settings and grisly lore, Bloodborne isn't a horror in the traditional sense. There are beasts, monsters, undead, and decay, of course, but what sets Bloodborne apart from its Soulsborne brethren is its exceptional gothic and cosmic horror aesthetics. Despite not being explicitly designed to conjure fear, imagining the beast behind Yharnam's distant groans and howls offers more terror than most survival horrors. Resident Evil 3: Nemesis. Taking place alongside the events of Resident Evil 2, we're thrust into the chaotic Raccoon City as Jill Valentine, as she attempts to escape the ensuing zombie outbreak. The star of the show, though, and principal reason why RE3 is arguably the hardest of all classic Resident Evils, is the rocket launcher-equipped Tyrant Nemesis. Its constantly stalking of Jill elicits constant paranoia in the player, and whilst numerous Resident Evil games have featured persistent pursuers, none have ever felt as threatening as Nemesis. Until Dawn Remake. Perhaps occupying your growing pile of pointless remakes, cult interactive teen slasher movie Until Dawn has received a glamorous Unreal Engine 5 refresh, with expected improvements in graphics, lighting, and texture commonplace. The story is unchanged, and the teens are just as hilariously unlikable, so it's understandably a hard sell for anyone already enamored with the original, but for newcomers, Until Dawn's remake provides an immersiveness not felt in the original. Silent Hill 2 Remake. Colossal was the task of remaking one of the most seminal survival horrors ever, but safe to say, Bloober Team have pulled it off. Silent Hill 2 is a triumph. All that was great about the original, its heavy atmosphere, constant dread, its exploration of its subject matter, has been recreated with surgical care. But it's those extras, new areas, fresh puzzles, and quality of life improvements, and a refined script that presents a vague yet familiar experience. Even veterans feel like newcomers in James's shoes. Dead Space Remake. Stepping aboard the USG Ishimura in Dead Space's 2023 remake feels incredibly unnerving, even if you've played the original and know the gore-filled calamity about to unfold. This, in part, is down to the ship's recreation, a twisting labyrinth of colossal proportion, modified just enough as to easily lose your bearings in the dark. Dead Space always excelled in sound design as well, and the remake's immersive audio pinpointing the still harrowing necromorphs as they scuttle through ventilation shafts is borderline traumatizing. Dead Space 2023 is an example of how all remakes should be done. Outlast. Seriously, who in their right mind even checks out a decrepit, isolated, abandoned asylum in the dead of night? That's crazy. That's what investigative journalist Miles did, armed with a camcorder on the hunt for a story surrounding rumors of inhumane treatment of patients. Well, nothing could prepare him, or you, the player, for what was in store. Tiptoeing through the ransacked hospital is downright terrifying. The sickly green glow of the camcorder's night vision the only means to see the grimy, shadowy figures ready to rip your torso in two. Visage. As slow burn a horror as you can get, Visage's glacial pace stirs stress and tension like no other. Clearly inspired by Silent Hill's playable teaser, PT, Visage has you assume the role of Dwayne as he traipses through a dimly lit suburban home, navigating through the tragic experiences of the house's former inhabitants. Each sub-story is chilling in its own right, but there are wider psychological connotations behind each tragedy, which Dwayne must relive, alongside the nefarious ghosts shape-shifting the corridors he's too afraid to walk through. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. Another non-traditional horror on this rundown, you might think The Last of Us Part 2 is more action-adventure in flavor, but Naughty Dog's post-apocalyptic zombie treks are ingrained in horror even if they're not overtly scary. The remaster's high-res visuals and enhanced audio sell the scares in the game's set pieces and cutscenes, though none more so in the hospital basement section with an encounter rivaling the scariest of Resident Evil's monsters. Resident Evil 2 Remake. Resident Evil 2 Remake is a perfect retelling of Leon and Claire's horrifying experience escaping Raccoon City the night of a zombie outbreak. Story, set pieces, monsters are largely unchanged from 1998's original, but the iconic title has been thoroughly modernized with over-the-shoulder perspectives and grander, almost opulent level design. The Raccoon City Police Department is as well-designed an environment you'll find in any game, but it's the stalking tyrant Mr. X whom you can hear bumbling throughout the building's drafts, who ensures you can't take in the decor. Resident Evil 2's remake reset the blueprint upon which all other horror remakes are compared. Alien Isolation. The Alien franchise's xenomorphs have lost their fear factor with every movie entry. Think back to the 1979 film. You rarely see the extraterrestrial killing machine in its entirety. Flashes of its bulbous skin or steamy acid streaming past glistening teeth. Horrifying glimpses only. Developer Creative Assembly tapped into this mindset, making the xenomorph as scary as that 1979 iteration in Alien Isolation. As Ripley's daughter Amanda, you'll need to observe environmental cues to survive, listen for pin drops, be one with the dark atmosphere. This alien hunter is clever, first glimpses are oftentimes too late. Alan Wake 2. This long-awaited sequel finds the titular troubled writer still in Bright Falls alongside new protagonist FBI agent Saga Anderson, who's in town investigating a series of ritualistic murders. Both of their stories wrapped together neatly, interwoven superbly amidst a backdrop of warped reality. Whilst the first Alan Wake was more action-oriented, Alan Wake 2 is undeniably shuffling and fear-inducing, a true survival horror masterpiece. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Following Resident Evil 6's large-scale eschewing of survival horror, the developer brought Resident Evil back to its roots for the 7th mainline entry, resulting in a thorough reincarnation of a series that was on the precipice of obsolescence. RE7 Biohazard was refined and claustrophobic, trapping Ethan Winters in the creaking confines of a humid swampland mansion, and as a relief, it was unforgivingly scary. Thanks to the luridly hostile Baker family, genuine fear returned to Resident Evil, and the series hasn't looked back since. Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Beginning with that most stereotypical of tropes, memory loss, Amnesia: The Dark Descent awakens Daniel in a gloomy, foreboding castle, hunted, scared, and alone. Gathering fortitude, he must forge through darkness, evading a whole mess of ungodly monsters in that process. The Dark Descent detours through the recesses of Daniel's mind as well, a twisting psychological torture manifested by Daniel's sanity mechanic, his fear of the dark. A constant need for light, else he descends further into madness. The results are truly terrifying. Even the most hard-faced of horror fans will likely be caught out by The Dark Descent. This game is not for the faint of heart. And that brings us to the end of this video. A quick request before we conclude. We upload new videos every single day, and if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out. Also, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon so that you can receive daily video updates. Thanks for watching.